Okay, good. So please, Lena, the motion is made.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Building Lands Committee meeting, April 25th, 6:30 p.m. Stand for pledge of allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so let the meeting minutes show that the committee is here. Councilman Havens, Councilwoman Swank, and Building Lands Chair Winkle are here. Also from Councilman Jacobs, DeVries, and Boots. From administration, we have Mayor Corcoran, CBO Fursden, and Economic Development Director Lieber, and Council Clerk Gallup. Before the minutes of the last Building Lands meeting on Thursday, September 23, 2021. Is there any comments or changes? Seeing none, those minutes are approved as written. We are here tonight to talk about T57 and 58. I guess we'll start with Councilman DeVries. You introduced him. If you can start us off, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, I was contacted by Guy Fursden as well as Economic Development Director Kim Lieber about some issues that were going on with the Board of Zoning, and how many times we were having meetings about fences, and that our legislation that we had on file was kind of outdated. So respectfully, I yield to Kim Lieber, who has done a lot of work on this with Guy Fursden, and she can probably explain it a little bit more detail and answer any questions you might have. I'm very happy to sponsor this. I think it makes a lot of sense. So this time I'll yield the floor.
Thank you. Ms. Lieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The amendments are proposed to the zoning code in T58 are to Chapter 1294, the supplementary regulations. And as Councilman DeVries said, this was initiated in response to the number of variance requests that BZBA was fielding, specifically related to height of front yard fences. But particularly in the variance cases we were seeing, it was really corner lots where the front yard was really the side street of that corner lot, where the fence could not be higher than 3.5 feet between the dwelling and the street line. We were hearing from applicants that as they attempted to comply with the code, that they were unable to find fencing at 3.5 feet, that the standard commercially available product was 4 feet. And so we were routinely seeing often multiple cases come to the BZBA the same meeting requesting 6-inch height variance, which was routinely
Still 50%.
yes, and still 50% open. So by making this change gave staff excuse me, an opportunity to look at other ways of improving this area of the code. So we looked at other locations in the codified ordinances that also address fencing so that we could try to eliminate any areas of conflict and also ideally locate all of our fence requirements in one spot to make it easy for residents and businesses alike. So, so T57 was actually one of those areas in the code that we discovered the provisions regarding electrified fences, where we thought we should have better coordination between our zoning code and our general fences code. So T57 would repeal that section of the code related to electrified fences and barbed wire fences, and would place the portion of the barbed wire fence that we're keeping in the zoning code. But in discussion and also in discussion with the councilman, we felt that as a growing suburban community that allowing any type of electrified fencing was really not appropriate. It should be the exception, not the rule. So currently the code does allow electrified fences in non-residential districts, non-lethal. We're proposing to remove that altogether, just to not allow electrified fences. So then we moved over to the zoning code and looked at other areas for improvement. So in 1294(1)E swimming pools, we'd like to remove the 5-foot height limit from pool fences. So it would still be subject to the same 6-foot height limit as any other residential fence. And then briefly, just to summarize the changes to 1294(01)H, which is the fences section. We have now grouped the fence requirements into different categories, 3 categories. So general standards for all fences, fences in residential districts, and then fences in non-residential districts. So trying to create just more clarities to help people understand what applies to their situation. We improved some of our definitions, so we clarified what's meant by the good side of the fence. We also better defined living fence, and we also made those height limits for anything that's vegetation consistent with regulations in our master tree plan chapter. We also added new language that prohibits fences from impeding visibility, access to utilities, or flow of stormwater. What started it all, we increased the height limit for front yard fences in residential districts from 3.5 to 4 feet, but we've maintained that 50% open requirement. We've also improved the language around how you can either install a fence along a property line, or in what cases a small setback might be required for maintenance or access. We have prohibited barbed wire fences in residential districts, but we continue to allow 2 strands of barbed wire in non-residential districts. But we've increased the minimum height from 4 feet to 6 feet off the ground to prevent, mostly kids from being able to touch. And then we just changed some references when we reference specific types of zoning districts as B and I. We just wanted to say any non-residential districts, so we encompass any and all current and future non-residential district categories as named. So that's a summary. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. I'd also like to add that this was both T57 and T58 were put before planning on April 19th, and it was passed by a vote of 5-0 to send it back to council for approval. Councilman Abrams, you sit on planning. Do you have any comments from planning, from your perspective on planning?
The only question I would have is pertaining to the barbed wire. And this goes back to some personal experience years ago. Chain link fence, if you flip it upside down, you have barbs sticking up. Would that still be covered under the barbed wire issue?
It's not defined as such. You don't typically see them flip the fence upside
Oh, I
down.
know. I'm just saying I had an experience with my next door neighbor, my former address did that.
I would say that from an inspection standpoint, it would be rejected
Okay.
and told to turn it around. Because it's not safe. It's much like years ago, somebody tried to construct a fence out of pallets right near the sidewalk. And we told them, no, that's a hazard for anybody walking by to get splinters or to get cut on that. And we made them remove it and put a proper fence up.
Otherwise, no, I don't have any other comments or questions.
So I give any comments or questions?
I do, and this comes from personal experience being on council. So there's a property in my ward where they butted their fences up. So somebody bought a house, they put a fence up and they butted it, and the other owner was mad. So would they have to now fix that problem, or is that something that just
Fix it out,
pull the fence back a little bit?
not required. If both fences are maintenance free, then there's no need to separate them. We always told applicants that if you have a fence and it's maintenance free, fine. But if it's not, you have to go on your neighbor's property and they don't give you permission, you're gonna have to figure out how to maintain that fence. So therefore, if you wanna pull it back 2 foot for maintenance purposes, that's up to you. But we've never enforced maintenance-free fences to have that requirement. So there's no need to get on the other side of the fence, it's maintenance-free. It's a vinyl or it's a pressure-treated fence that's good for 30 years.
If I could add to that, also, zoning changes, they look forward, they don't look back. So anything that existing at the time of a zoning amendment would be grandfathered. So if they're installed or into permit, they'd be able to retain that forever, unless they were ever to remove the fence entirely and then reinstall, then it would have to comply with the new code.
Okay, and then one other question I had, but I think Marty might have already answered it. Does this include electric fences as far as like for animals goes?
Those aren't electric fences, they're sending a signal through there, the electricity's in their collar that shocks them. So the signal sets that off. You and I can walk over that invisible fence and nothing's gonna happen.
Okay,
They're not structures.
And if they're putting that on their kids, then child protective service.
Or husbands.
then the police get called. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Reese.
Just one final comment too, that there is no residential houses right now in North Ridgeville that have electrical fences. So it's not like people are gonna have to make any kind of changes or be grandfathered in or anything like that. Of course, commercial Businesses like, for instance, Hall's Towing, they're still allowed to have it, according to this, this ordinance or whatever, it's not gonna change anything for them, so we're not affecting anybody, I guess is my point. We're just prohibiting in the future anybody getting them.
Mr. President?
For years, we prohibited the electric fences, especially the agricultural ones. And a business came to the city years ago with this non-lethal one. But when I was talking to the economic development director, we decided, well, even those could malfunction. And as we get more population and more children, we just thought it was safer just to eliminate it, because if we issued one permit under that ordinance, we were lucky, and that's been on the books probably a good 20-25 years.
I could add to that, a non-lethal system, 5 milliamps is enough to do damage internally without even knowing it. So I agree with you there. I'd like to add that I sit on BZA, we get several variance requests for a 6-inch rule from 3.5 to 4 feet. And this makes a lot of sense in that regard. I would almost say, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 70% of our applications may be under that category. It's significant. So that makes a lot of sense. And correct me if I'm wrong, if for some reason someone wanted to do something that we did not foresee that would go back into the old code, they could go to BZA with a practical difficulty and go about their business that way to see if they do prove they have a practical difficulty if that were to happen. Correct? Okay. Any other council members have any comments or questions? Anybody else from administration? Okay, so with that being said, on T57 and T57 only, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll move to adopt and send back to council.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Havens and seconded by Swank to send back to council with recommendation of adoption. All in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed? So for vote 3-0, T57 will be sent back to council with the recommendation to adopt. On T58, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll move to recommend adoption
Second.
and send back to council.
Okay, it's been moved by Havens, seconded by Swank to send T58 back to council with the recommendation of adoption. All in favor say yes. Yes. All opposed? So also by a vote of 3-0, T58 will be sent back to council with the recommendation to adopt. That being said, is there any final comments or questions, committee members? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.